I'm so happy to be joined by Steve Martocci, who is probably most notable for co-founding GroupMe, which so many college students, Gen Z, and millennials use. You've also founded several other companies, which I can't wait to dive in and talk about. But before I get started, I do just got to say that if you are ever in Indiana, make sure you stop by the restaurant AJ's. They've always been a good friend of the show. And when college students are hungry, it's a great place to eat at. With that being said, how did you get involved with entrepreneurship?
Hmm.
GroupMe has a great story. Take me through.
Yeah, so I mean, first, thanks for having me. This is a fun little, a fun, not little, it's a fun audience to talk to, just because of the times too, and everybody trying to figure out what to do in the world of AI. So I'm happy to be here. GroupMe. So I had wanted to own a software company since I was in sixth grade. I was just like, when I touched a computer and I got my first computer at home, it was just like, this is my canvas. Like, I'm a tall guy. I'm like 6'5". I try to play all the sports and do all the coordinated things. I'm just not good at it. And like code and software is really my gift. And I knew I wanted to do it. And then, come college, I would start working on my, kind of own projects, even more than probably my college work. And then the journey was worked at a software company for a year or two right after school. Got then My parents helped me start a company, which eventually failed. I always talk about failure if you want. And in that process, I was working at a company called Guilt Group in the city, and I'm a jam band guy. Like I go, been seeing Fish since I was in 10th grade, and the Dead, and this band, the Disco Biscuits, and I had this friend who we just always talked about entrepreneur ideas and what we should build and stuff, and I didn't like any of his ideas. And then one day he's like, "Why can't we stay in touch at concerts?" Like we this was before group messaging existed on the iPhone. And I was like, I like that. I think I can fix that. So in 24 hours at a hackathon, uh, it was let's build group text messaging because it didn't exist. It was very cool. Every group got its own phone number, and it was completely SMS based in the beginning. But it was an instant hit. We used it to go to a Disco Biscuits concert at Red Rocks the week after, and my co-founder used it to go uh, during the birth of like his niece, I think it was, and stay in touch with his family. And it was like, this is great. This is how we should be staying in touch. And that was the origin story for GroupMe.
And since GroupMe, you've gone on to create other ventures that have been very successful.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, sometimes people listen on Spotify, sometimes people listen on YouTube. But if you're watching on YouTube or a streaming platform, you're wearing a hat.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that startup. That is
Yeah,
not GroupMe.
yeah. So the story post GroupMe was, after that we sold the company very quickly. We sold it in
One
like
year,
13 months, yeah, total that we ran that. Sold to
300.
Skype, which then got acquired into Microsoft, and GroupMe has outlived Skype, which I always think is a very funny one to look back on. And then I wanted to build again. I tried to help Skype from the inside, and it wasn't going great. And Wanted to build again, and then built first. I built a company called Splice, which was made to help musicians collaborate because my musician friends were struggling, and my one friend John, he had gotten into programming, and he's like, "Where are these tools? Where's GitHub for music?" And I was like, "I want to build that." It was actually at the top of my do not do this list because building in music is kind of crazy from a venture perspective. But built that. That's scaling well. It's like 150 million a year ARR business and profitable, which is great. I ran that for 10 years. Also co-founded a helicopter company called Blade. That was more of I named it, did the logo with my friend Taylor, and built the initial app, hired the initial team, and then Rob ran that thing all the way to being a public company through a SPAC, which was very cool to see. And now I got SuppCo. So after 10 years of it was 9 years of CEOing, I wanted to get back to building again because they're very different modes. And my as I mentioned before, I've always been tall, but I was a 300-pound kid. In college, I think I was 300 pounds, 299 on a scale. And I turned my health around after GroupMe. I was like 270 when GroupMe sold, and made a commitment to health and wellness, and really turned things around. People wanted to know what was I doing, what was the secret. You know, this is 10 years before Ozempic was a thing, and I would share them this Google spreadsheet that was an out of date list of my supplements and medications. And we kind of harnessed that concept back into how do we share people and kind of let people learn about the supplements that people are taking. And that evolved further into like, oh my God, the supplement industry is really broken. There's a lot of just bad information and players you can't trust. And we've built like a really comprehensive platform here at SuppCo that helps people make sense of supplements from who to trust, what to take, how to get results, all that.
And your health journey is really inspiring. I was reading about that. What's the benefit, in your opinion, since you've created other startups since
Mm-hmm.
GroupMe, that being in better health contributes running a company or being an entrepreneur?
It's a great question. I think that, you look at someone like Brian Johnson, who's like, oh my God, entrepreneurs, you're like throwing your life away. You're so much cognitively worse than you could be if you were doing X, Y, and Z. You know, but then you look at it and he's like, well, until I was 43 years old, I was also doing those things. And he made a very successful business. For me, in my 20s, we were running around, needing to be social, going out at night, using GroupMe, and then coming back to the office in the morning and fixing what was, we needed to fix that day. That we were our own product testers. I'm not going to tell you that I was living healthy then at all, right? Like I was out a lot of nights. I would drink a lot. I would eat terrible, and I wouldn't go to the gym. Um, the that was successful for me in that period of time, young in my 20s. But it was as I was like turning 30, I was like, oh my God, how is it? This isn't sustainable. Like I'm not going to make it now that I've succeeded. I want to live. And so, I shifted modes and I made, gym time and eating right and all those things part of my startup routine. And they're just kind of non-negotiables for me now. But I'm not going to tell you that you need to do that from when you're in before you're 30. I'm going to tell you you need to do what you want to do to get shit done in the world and build what you want the world you want to see. If Brian Johnson can be the most measured man and most best numbered man that he says he is in his 40s and started this at 43, do what you got to do in your 20s. So that's just kind of my thinking.
And is there anybody that you mentioned Brian Johnson, obviously from more of a health standpoint, who later bought PayPal before it got sold again and all that, and lives a very healthy life now and is a fitness influencer more so, it
Yeah.
feels like, or health influencer. But is there anybody from an entrepreneurial standpoint, um, or even venture capital standpoint that has really inspired you maybe when you were younger and maybe even now in the last few years because it's changed so much?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, the thing that's really changed for me has been I didn't have a kid. I had my first kid at, I guess, 41. I think he's 2 years old now, or almost two. And, I think when I now reflect on the past and I look at the entrepreneurs who managed to pull off what they have done with children, I'm like really impressed. And now I'm like, teach me your ways, you know? It's like less about an individual person and more about a category of entrepreneurs that are like, how did you manage to have children and see them and build successful companies? Because I kind of only knew the put my head down and grind mode. Um, and so I think the model for me is just kind of changing and like, you talk about work life balance, but it's not really it's 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 yeah, my priorities have shifted a bit, right? The thing that's priority for me now is to build a stable and healthy family along with building a great company. So I think it's a category of entrepreneurs and just like so now you see me talking to all these VCs and all these, even my co-founder from GroupMe, Jared, he had his kids really early, and so now it's just like, tell me how you do this. What are you doing here? Like that's where I'm finding a lot of inspiration is how to keep it all together as you're still building businesses with more responsibility.
And obviously, you talk about startups and grinding.
Sure.
A lot of startups fail, and
Mm-hmm.
we hear of the generic ones that you hear in business school or even in elementary school of you need capital. If you don't have capital, your business goes bankrupt, or if you're arguing with your, fellow partners or employees, your company's going to fall apart. Are there any other things through your experience besides the normals that you see for why people really fail?
I mean, so if I play back to my first startup, which is actually before GroupMe, it was called Simpact Technologies. Back in the day, I wanted to build the digital version of of the Lance Armstrong bracelet to put on your MySpace page, which was that's how old I am, right? And what was interesting about that is it was the only way to get content onto MySpace was to render an image dynamically because you could literally only put images on it. And it turns out that tech was really good for email marketing, and I was doing a lot. And uh, I think the thing that and then technically that company failed. I shut it down. I did end up getting to parlay it a bit into a friend's company who wanted to build that same idea and eventually made it a big business that just sold for like a $500 million. And I had some equity in it, which was cool. But why did I fail? I failed for a couple of reasons. One, I just thought that one more feature was going to make the difference, and so I would just kind of keep my head down, just keep building and do one more thing and think that that was going to be the solution for me. Two, I didn't really have a network when it came to investors or even other entrepreneurs. I was very much a solo kind of engine. And this was before New York even really had that much of a venture scene. This was like 2009, 2008 even, which was a terrible year to be fundraising. Um, Actually, a little before that, it was like 2007, 2006. Like it was early. And so I didn't have a good network. I was really young in my career. I thought that if I just built another feature, that was going to be the answer. I wasn't putting enough into like business development and making sure the clients were actually getting what they needed. I was putting more into just the tech, um, and I learned a lot from that. And I still get stuck in that sometimes, just wanting to build one more feature or one more thing. But I just have a lot more. I surround myself with a really great team. And I'm always, have a real ear to the market, making sure that what we're building is working and what people want.
Amazing to hear. And I always like to end with a few fireball questions, not fireball shots, fireball questions.
Whatever you want.
What's one of your favorite places that you've been able to visit? It could be domestic or foreign that
Sure.
you've been able to visit because of business and the experiences that you've created for yourself through working hard.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I discovered Burning Man, I would say 2015. So, probably like 5 years after GroupMe even sold. Um, and Burning Man is a magical, incredible place. And if you have a lot of uh, inspiration to build stuff and participate, and you have means to do that as well, it becomes like a very cool canvas for creativity. Um, and so that one was one that I'm kind of happier I found later than early, because I think it also starts to be one of those things that's you don't like it kind of sticks with you as you leave and you think about it for next year and what you want to build and what you want to do, and it can be like kind of distracting. And so that I would say like being able to discover that later in life after some success has been a real kind of powerful one for
And you mentioned at one point, obviously, you got a lot healthier and you weighed a lot more. What's one exercise
me.
that you did to become more healthy? Obviously, you did a lot, but what's one that you would pick if you had to pick maybe your favorite?
I mean, okay. So a couple of things I'm going to say just on the advice on that. My profile for success there was I needed a trainer. I just don't have the drive to bring myself to push myself hard enough on my own. Right? It would be great if I did. And if you have that motivation, great. Go. We can talk about single exercises. But for us that were struggling, we needed someone to push us. So like my single best exercise was just the accountability of another human in the room. And now for me, so I have a bad lower back. I have a degenerative disc disease, and like I throw it out. So if I try to like lift too heavy, I kind of throw my back out. I have found a class. If you hear the word Pilates, you kind of think of just like the normal Pilates. There's a thing called Legree, which is on a bigger machine, and it's much more intense. And so I do Legree Pilates. I try to do it twice a week to kind of both get the core strength, which helps my back situation, and I don't get injured when I do it. I stay flexible.
Amazing. And my last fireball
Go
question
for it.
is, what is the best season to accomplish a lot of work in your opinion? Is it winter? Is it spring? Is it
Yeah,
summer? Is it fall? I'm curious. I've never asked somebody who's created as many startups as yourself this question.
yeah. It's a really, really good and interesting question. I think if when I think about the seasons, it's to me, it's whenever you can just maintain extreme focus. And for a while, there were summers in New York where everyone would be flying out, or they'd be going, even when they would be taking blades and stuff, and I would be like, no, I'm just going to stay in the city and do work because no one's around. You look at people like in Sweden and stuff like that. They have no light from like you know, I forget which months are like almost totally dark up there, but like the winter is like just a couple slivers of hours of light a day. And they get a ton of shit done. That's why they're like so great at making music, and they like lock themselves in a room and like, do all this focus work. And so like for me, it's not about, the season in particular. It's about when can you get, these periods of extreme focus. Sometimes over the holidays, none of my team is wants to talk to me because they're off doing something, and I can sit down and just like think about a bunch of new stuff, build a couple prototypes, and do stuff. So for me, it's really about like cycling through the year for when your team is in flow together, when you need to be around people, and then taking advantage of the time when you can also have some space to yourself to think big or play with some ideas and things on your own.
Insightful information right there. Personally, I just got to say, I don't think the season matters as long as you have a hustle, but that's just my opinion. Maybe it's because I have to podcast throughout the year.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
But no, I appreciate you coming on the show today.
I'll give your listeners, if you do think you have a lot of GroupMe users, I'll give you guys a little fun little thing. But if you go into the GroupMe emojis, I'm gonna try to pull it up on my phone. I don't know if anyone's ever publicly talked about this, but there's like this set of emojis that are part of GroupMe that are kind of like, we used to say they're the missing emojis because remember the emoji set was much smaller back in the day, but there's a bunch of them. If you look at this one, this row here, that's me. So that's Steve. That's Jared. That's my iced coffee from the office. It's our squirrel, which is our mascot we had in the office. But these are just GroupMe office emojis. So just a nice, fun one to kind of throw into the lineage there.
I got to ask one quick follow-up to
As
that.
many as you want.
So, obviously, being sold to Sky, now Microsoft, did you tell them to keep those emojis or have they just always kept them in there? I have to ask that question.
Yeah, I mean they've been there. I don't know if they know that they're us, but like they're in there, which is great. I once had another crazy story on this front. Is I once had I interviewed a PM at a product manager at Splice, and he said, oh, he used to work at Apple, and he was like, yeah, I was on the iMessage team, and my job for 3 years was literally to just copy everything you built. And so I remember coming up with when you send an emoji on its own and it's like big, we were the first people to do that. And so like having invented these things that are just part of everyday communication, whether you're in GroupMe or not in GroupMe, has been a very fun little, you know, moment of time in part of history.
Great. Well, Steve, I appreciate you joining. Any last advice you have for young
Yeah,
people?
look, hey, I wanted to, particularly for your audience, right? Like I know that you've got a like, younger audience and people are trying to figure out what to do and get into. And I will just tell you all this, and like you're probably all thinking about AI and probably using AI as much as you can. But in all of my years of being an entrepreneur, the power that the AI has given me as an engineer, because I'm a hands-on programmer, is absolutely absurd. And like, if anyone's doubting whether or not this revolution is coming or all that, it's here. What's happening in my day to day is absurd. And if you're trying to figure out where to get started, like mastering or just exploring with these tools all the time, picking different disciplines to go deeper on, like the the fact of the matter is no one, I don't know if anyone has any good real advice for y'all in the younger generation right now because of how powerful this stuff is. And just like ride the wave and stay on top of this because you can be more powerful than people who have had entire careers going in different directions that might be telling you to do this or do that, that you may be able to do yourself by just, you know, literally figuring it out on the fly. And so be ambitious. Like for me, hiring right now is about tenacity and like people who just are ready to figure it all out and go for it and have all the drive and the will. Because I feel like that's becoming even harder to find. You have like too many people that are complacent or just happy being gamers and like don't want to like kind of push the boundaries. But you find those people who want to, and you give them these tools to make them superhumans. Like it gets real interesting real fast. So I just wanted to make sure, for everyone out there trying to figure it out, like jump on the bandwagon, try all this stuff, learn because you could be more powerful than all the people who are trying to give you the advice of what to do just on your own.
Amazing to hear because the AI thing, not a single person in any college will say that right there. Parents won't say it. Um, Peers will maybe say it. Professors won't say it. Obviously, don't want to cheat and stuff like that, but nobody wants to confront the AI thing. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for.
And the last thing on college life, I used to be the funniest guest you'd bring to a college campus to like I'd go back to Carnegie Mellon and speak. And I tell people, I'm like, honestly, if it's easy for you to get an A, fine. But if you have to work to get an A, you should just get a B. And you should spend the rest of your time building something and networking with people, like literally like you creating a podcast. Like this stuff is so valuable. Like get some of that fundamental education for sure. But like there are so many skills that you learn just being social, being having independence, and like being able to have access to the amazing tools and technology. Like fill it with be if you want to be an entrepreneur, become it while you're at school.
Amen. Thank you so much for coming
Cool.
on.
Thanks for having me.